Welcome to Flunking the Written, a fully spoiled Buffy the Vampire Slayer podcast in which two Uber fans break down every episode of the show. Join Kimberly and Megan every Tuesday as they overanalyze each scene and discuss the Buffyverse at large. Now let's meet up with the Scoobies and get into this week's episode of Flunking the Written.
What can I say? I flunked the written.
Alright, Kimberly, we are going to discuss The Dark Age, which was written by Dean Batali and Rob Des Hotel, and was directed by Bruce Seth Green. And we're going to hear our lovely blurb, which is, Giles' past comes back to haunt him when a demon he and Ethan Rayne summoned in their wild days comes looking for them in Sunnydale.
Very much accurate. It leaves a lot of details out.
I like wild days as describing what it's like to casually decide that summoning a demon and getting possessed by it is a good idea.
And multiple times.
Yeah, it's just
multiple times.
It's just
they
their
did
wild
this
days.
as a thing. Yeah, this was their Friday night schedule.
This is kind of one of the more meh episodes for me. And I think particularly what bothers me about this episode is I feel like it should be better than it is. Because a lot of big things happen in it, but the episode overall is not that extraordinary.
I feel like Giles should have had more of a part in this episode. Less hiding and drinking and a little more doing.
Yeah.
Like being a part of things, being Ripper.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, he definitely takes a backseat in this episode, which feels like it should be his episode.
Right, because it's about him and his past.
So we start outside of the school, and there's a Suit Guy. We originally learned his name is Philip, but I called him Suit Guy at first in my notes. He is kind of just walking, clearly very anxious, and talks to the janitor about trying to figure out where Rupert Giles is. And the janitor, is just totally, nonchalant. It's the middle of the night. There's this random guy in a suit looking for the librarian. And the janitor not only, doesn't really think it's too incredibly weird, but also just expects Giles to be at the library.
Yeah, he's in that other building, next door or second door on the right or whatever.
Yeah.
Which, can we take a moment and think about how dangerous this man's job is?
The janitor?
Sunnydale High School custodian.
Yeah.
I'm assuming he has to go down in the basement a lot. In the boiler room.
No.
Cleaning at night. Outside. He's outside emptying trash in this scene.
Uh-huh.
How dangerous is this man's job? How often? What's the turnover like?
I imagine it's
in this position.
Thinking back about how many abandoned custodial carts we've seen, I'm wondering if there's a reason for that.
Yeah, not just props.
Anyway, so he approaches the door, Philip approaches the door to try to get in to meet with Giles, and something approaches him from behind, and it is Deirdre, who is very demon-y, and Philip begins
a little bit
banging on the door, screaming for help, and inside, Buffy is aerobicizing to the beat.
Just some techno dance music. Giles is not enjoying it. And they have a little discussion about how it's not music, and Buffy has to have the music. And we cut back to Philip outside, still screaming for help, as Demon Deirdre strangles him to death. And he falls down dead, and she falls down next to him and turns into a puddle of goo.
Mm-hmm.
Which strangely looks like the slime that my kids play with.
So yeah, conveniently enough, Buffy decides at that time to turn off the music, and Giles declares, and the rest is silence, which is, of course, Hamlet's last words. And then we cut to Philip being dead at that moment. And that's when we go to credits. bizarre opening, to say the least.
Yes. Usually the teaser is Buffy killing something.
Yeah. I mean, I want my
Generally what we're used
traditional,
to.
we start in the cemetery. What's up with this?
Okay, and then the next scene is, you can kind of tell it's a dream. Lots of different flashes. Someone kind of getting a tattoo, and basically some 70s
Yeah,
guys.
the most 70 flashes that you ever did see.
And it's all interspersed with flames.
Clearly some, like, ritualistic acts involved. Some of that works for me, some of it doesn't work for me at all. But yeah, Giles wakes up, and it's revealed that it was in fact his dream. So, oh no, what's going on with Giles?
Yeah, because normally the dreams are Buffy's. And then the next scene is at school, and some students are walking around, and that Buffy is sitting on a bench talking to Willow. And again, I'm going to say it's one of my pet peeves in this show, but they are dressed for completely different seasons again.
I didn't notice it this time.
Willow is wearing a long sleeve shirt and long pants. Xander comes up halfway through the conversation, and he's wearing pants and a t-shirt and a hoodie. And Buffy looks like she's going to the beach. Like, she's wearing a halter top and a, like, micro mini skirt.
Yeah.
And it's just like everyone's dressed for, like, late fall or early winter, except Buffy, who is dressed for, like, 120 degrees in you know, on the beach.
Well, I had a,
it drives me insane the way they do that.
I had a thought this episode about Giles's tattoo, because we know that there's Angel's tattoo that they have to remember to put on anytime that they show his back. But I was thinking about Giles, and I was just like, he always wears long sleeves. I bet there's like 3 other scenes in the entire series where they had to remember to put that tattoo on.
Yeah. Okay. And I'll tell you, during this scene, it annoys me so much that during this scene, I rewound it to watch everyone around them, and they're almost all dressed for winter, for like fall, winter. There's a couple of them that are wearing, like in the background, that are wearing short sleeves.
So maybe Buffy's just,
but it is mostly dressed for fall, winter. And we see Miss Calendar. She comes up to him, and she's wearing a sweater.
Yeah.
And it's just like, why do they do this? It's so, I don't know, it drives me insane.
Maybe Buffy's just incredibly warm-natured. Maybe that comes with the Slayer ability.
I mean, they could at least have everyone else wearing summer clothes. Just, I don't like it. For some reason, it pulls me right out of the show. I just don't like it.
Well, speaking of being pulled out of where you are, Buffy and Willow are playing Anywhere But Here, which is a
fun game.
I have never played, and, like, never even really seen anybody talk about, except for, like, this one scene, this one moment of time. Like, is this a game that kids play? Is this something that is common enough?
I'd never heard of it.
This is the only time that I have ever experienced anybody playing this game. But, like,
maybe it's a game they made up.
Yeah, it's their special game. But yeah, they're basically just bored of school and figuring out ways to pass the time. Yeah. Xander walks up and asks what they're doing, and apparently he is a man of simple needs, and his Anywhere But Here is always Amy Yip at the water skate park, which I appreciate that he keeps consistent.
Never changes it. Then they end by discussing whether or not they think Giles ever played that game, and come to the conclusion that no, he never wanted to be somewhere else besides school. He wanted to be in math class and wore tweed diapers.
Yeah. So the group then meets up with Giles, and he explains that there's a medical transport scheduled, which Buffy describes as vampire meals on wheels, which I appreciate.
In between there's a scene that was cut out that's in the script book, and it's just basically a conversation between Buffy and Giles about how stuffy he is.
I guess they figured out they
how
had
different
that
from
and the rest of the episode.
How different from her generation. Like, they kind of hint about it and then talk about it a little bit, but it like goes into a lot of detail about it. But, yeah. It would have been a little much if it had all been in there.
I already kind of feel like it's a little much with what we have. In the front section of this episode, Giles's fuddy-duddy, I'll use that expression because that's what Ginny uses, is kind of cranked up. And they have a habit of doing this when they're trying to go for a certain theme or story idea, that they kind of exaggerate certain characteristics of the main characters. And it's real weird.
I think that conversation is basically trying to do that to ramp it up. Then he has a conversation with Ginny. She talks about a book that she borrowed from him and about dog-earing the pages and then underlining stuff she wanted to talk about in it. And he's like, but it's a first edition. And I'm just like, who loans out a first edition? Who loans out a first edition of any book?
That's all Giles owns, though.
I know, but like...
Every book Giles has is a first edition. In some cases, the only edition. No.
I have a first edition of the first Harry Potter book, and I promise you, I would never loan that out. And that's like, what, 20 years old, if that?
No, I just wrote in my notes here that Ginny hears that the copy was Giles's father's, and then starts to administer the worst type of torture imaginable.
Oh yes, definitely.
It is so cruel. Like I am there with Giles, suffering with Giles as he hears all of those horrible things being done to that book.
And then she calls him a sexy fuddy-duddy.
Mm-hmm. Again, Ginny also, I feel like, is turned up a little bit. Like
she is turned up a little bit through this whole episode.
Yeah. She's just a little too sultry compared to what I experienced.
What if she normally is? Yeah. They talk about going out, and she says, "I'd like to stay in," and you know, we'll do it this Saturday night, and I'll see if I can make you squirm.
Which is meant to sound sexy, but it really isn't.
Yeah.
There's certain words that you shouldn't introduce into that scenario, and squirm is one of them, in my opinion.
And in our discussion about them trying to make Giles seem fuddy-duddy-ish, after she says that in the show, the scene ends. In the script book, Giles replies, "Oh yes, put me down for squirminess." Oh, gross. And then says, "Oh, but a suave person would have just shut up and walked away right then, wouldn't he?" And Ginny says, "Possibly." And Giles says, "Well, why don't I try that now?" So yeah, they tried to ramp it up a lot, and they took some of the ramping it up out. Yeah, but I'm going to share all of those as we get to it, because that put me down for squirminess part is really awkward. So Giles goes to the library, and there is a detective. Sunnydale has a detective. They have a police force that's actually investigating stuff. What is going on? They're actually looking into something. But, I mean, it could be because this murder doesn't have anything to do with the people who govern Sunnydale. And they're like, oh, wait, where'd this murder come from? And it's weird how she talks to him. Because she just like, "Rupert Giles?" And he says, "Yes." And he said, "I'm Detective Winslow. You're going to have to come with me." And I'm like, wouldn't she, like, say, "I need to ask you a few questions," or whatever? Not just, "You're going to have to come with me." Like he's under arrest or something, you know? It seemed like a weird way to start the conversation to me. Yeah. What did you think so? Oh, I thought the detective was weird all around. Yeah. Everything about the detective was weird. Then Cordelia comes in and starts talking about having to read a computer book, and Giles kind of tries to get rid of her, and she sees the cops and starts trying to get them to help her with a ticket. And Giles goes, "Cordelia." And she gets all annoyed. It's like, why does everyone always say my name like that? Which I love. I just love. Which she does that. And tells him that she can take a hint, and then pauses for a minute and says, "What's the hint?" And then she leaves. Giles asks the police officer or the detective, where is it you want me to go? And then we cut to Giles in a morgue. Then he's about to identify a dead body. At which point, the very, very awkward and inappropriate morgue attendant goes, "Have you had breakfast?" Yeah. And he says no. And the guy says that was probably a good idea. And I'm like, that's just inappropriate. And not funny. Maybe, to the people who work in the morgue, it's funny, but like to someone coming to identify a body, not funny.
Perhaps the morgue also has trouble keeping people, and so they're left to hire people like this. A lot of bodies get up and shove them in the lockers and things like that. But yeah, so do we count this as a body behind a door? There is a door to the exterior. We did it for Never Kill a Boy on the First Date. Similar scenario, so.
I think it is just because, if it was just a body and didn't wake up later, I would say no. But this body wakes up later and comes out from behind the door. So I'm going to go with yes.
All right. Good enough for me.
And now we have 4 bodies behind doors.
Woohoo! The detective asks, after Giles has identified the body as Philip Henry, who he hasn't spoken to for 20 years, asks if there was any reason that he would want to contact him, and Giles says no, and then stares at this tattoo for like a good minute, which at least the detective picked up on that and like actually asks him about it, because he's super obvious.
He lies through his teeth, and it's very obvious he's lying.
Mm. So and then the detective like ceases to exist after this.
Yeah, pretty much. We cut to Buffy, and she's at the hospital for the blood delivery that they are supposed to be meeting to protect. And she's wondering where Giles is. And there's a scene here that's cut out where she like goes to a payphone and calls Giles and is like talking to herself about why Giles is not there, and asks the operator to check a line for her. And then she sees the car come and hangs up.
So this tan van with like a very cheaply made stuck on medical transport sign on either side pulls up. And I'm just like, I do not feel like this is a legitimate delivery service.
No. And no, it's very much not.
And then they pull it out, and it's just like a regular food cooler. It's just
the props department didn't do real great in this. And then they just hand it to the 2 guys in scrubs who Buffy calls cute ER doctors. I don't know why she assumes they're doctors, but then later says, since when do doctors take deliveries? Which they could have been orderlies.
Yeah.
Or something. But it would probably be like someone in, business casual clothes who runs the blood bank that would come out and get that. Not orderlies or nurses or someone wearing scrubs, So I guess she has a point.
Yeah. She got there. She figured it out.
Yeah. So she jumps up there and starts fighting them, and then almost stakes a vampire and realizes it's Angel, who has just arrived, by the way. He wasn't there. So they start fighting. They get all of them but one, who drives away. And Buffy's like, how did you know about this? And Angel says it's delivery day. Everyone knows about this.
Okay, I have notes about this.
I'm wondering if this hospital ever gets any blood.
I have notes about this concerning Angel particularly.
Go ahead.
But yeah, probably not. I don't know why they're getting deliveries in the middle of the night either, but
Yeah. That seems weird too.
Angel makes the comment, it's delivery day. Everybody knows about this. Now, if you go back to the episode Angel, he has medical blood bags in his fridge when Darla looks in his fridge. So, like, part of me is wondering, in his growth, in his trying to, like, become better, when does he truly switch from, like, human blood to pig blood? Because there's even this moment in an exchange after they, like, take care of the vamps, where Buffy asks Angel if he can get the blood to the hospital, and then gives him a look as if, like, don't keep any samples kind of look.
Well, maybe he's there for delivery day and he takes like 3 or 4 bags and gives the rest to the hospital.
Maybe that's it. He just skims a little off the top.
I would guess he switches to animal blood in season 3 when he comes back and he's got Buffy bringing him blood.
Yeah.
Because isn't that the first time they talk about pig's blood?
Very possible. I don't know when they start talking about drinking pig's blood, but that is something that has yet to be discussed at this point in the series.
I think that's it, but I guess we will find out. They might talk about it between now and later.
Yeah. It's also interesting. This is This is one of the first times that we see, like, Angel, like, really actually fight, I think. Like, he fights here and there in a couple of things, but, like, he came here to stop these vampires and maybe skim a little blood off the top. But he came here to take the initiative of, like, this is something that needs to be dealt with. I'm not going to call Buffy in on this one, even though, like, in season 1, he would call Buffy on the smallest things. He'd be like, there's a threat in Sunnydale somewhere. Cool, I've done my job, bye.
Yeah.
But here he's just, like, takes the initiative and he actually goes out on his own to stop this
I wonder
threat.
if this is, like, when it starts changing and Angel becomes a fighter and not just a Buffy fan.
But yeah, this is one of the few times we've seen Angel really take the initiative
So far
in this series, and it is definitely noteworthy to see Angel go to something like this on his own.
Well, and you kind of get the impression that Angel's out there fighting the good fight too.
Yeah.
Whenever he's not with Buffy, which is not something that has been really played up before. So then Buffy says she's going to go check on Giles, and she leaves to go do that and goes to his door and knocks, and he kind of answers, and you can tell he's been drinking, and he's like, yeah, what's up? I'll see you Monday. And Buffy's like, do you forget you're supposed to meet me tonight? And he remembers and asks if she's all right. Are you hurt? And I love her comment here. She goes, no. Well, I mean, my feelings a little.
Yeah.
I like that comment. I'm like, oh. Now he basically blows her off, and she listens outside the door after he shuts it for a minute, and he is calling around trying to find people he used to know, and discovers that Deirdre, she has passed away recently. He says he's sorry and hangs up and is very upset, crosses her name off a list, and the only 2 names left on the list are Ethan Rain and him. And here's my question though. The demon kills, one of the people and takes over its body and then goes looking for the other person. Now, how did this demon travel from London to Sunnydale? Right?
Yeah. No.
We know it didn't go on a plane or boat or something like that, because these bodies don't last very long. They only last, like, this guy only lasts less than a day.
Yeah.
So
don't think about it too hard.
I'm just saying, I'm wondering how she got there.
Yeah, like I said, this episode is just, I don't care about the main antagonist of it. I don't care about most of what's going on here with this idea of the possession. And I don't particularly like what they end up doing with it towards the end when it takes hold of Jenny. It's real rough all around. But I am excited because this is the first time we see Giles's apartment. And it is one of my favorite sets of the entire series. I love Giles's apartment. And it's not fully realized here, but you can start to see it take form. And it's just, it's going to be so pretty one day. Also, so after he's kind of marked off the names on his list, he goes over to wash his face using a pitcher and basin.
Yeah, what is that? I saw that too. I'm like, first of all, I'm like, why does he keep his sink full of water? And then I realized, and I'm like, why, Giles? Why?
It's a nice apartment, but the indoor plumbing's got some kinks.
Apparently.
Anyway, so he washes his face and he looks in the mirror and says, "So you're back." And we cut to the morgue from there, and Philip wakes up and has some glowy eyes.
Did you mention the tattoo?
Oh, yeah, he has a tattoo. I mentioned it earlier.
Well, I mean, this is where we see it. He rolls up his sleeve when he's washing his face, and we see the tattoo.
Yep.
The same one Philip had.
So then we get a scene of somebody with the morgue. I don't know what his exact job title would be, but he's checking the temperatures, and then he opens up the door where Philip would have been, and Philip is not there, and comes around and throws him into the locker and shuts him in. And yeah, that's what's going on with Philip.
And then he starts like walking out.
Yep. Which apparently at some point he gets dressed.
I'm trying to find clothes, which he does find. You wouldn't think that the the demon possessing a dead body would be that concerned about it, but apparently he is.
You know, modesty.
Yeah. Then we cut to Sunnydale High, and Cordelia, Xander, and Willow and Miss Calendar are heading in there to do some computer work to get caught up for Cordelia and Xander, and for extra credit for Willow.
So really, it's a very convenient group of people that are having trouble with computers. And it seems mandatory based on the way that Xander and Cordelia are complaining. So it's not even like they asked for help, and, you know, that kind of would have worked more. But no, they don't want to be there at all.
Yeah. They make some jokes about computers versus paper and abacuses. Abaci.
Yep.
And they go in and sit down, and Jenny says the first thing we want to do, and then Buffy walks in. And Xander, I love this line. Xander's like, huh? Did I fall asleep already?
Oh, yeah.
And I love that line. It's so funny. It's like, huh? And then Buffy kind of tells what's going on with Giles and that she's worried about him.
He didn't show up when he was supposed to last night. And then when I went over to his place, he was acting, well, very anti-Giles. He wouldn't let me in. And he looked really bad. I think he might have been... I think he was drinking.
He was home alone drinking?
But tea, right? Wasn't tea, Will.
Here's my thing, though. They are really, really worried about Giles, because Giles was home alone drinking on a Friday night.
Yeah, which seems very normal. And I think it's more because he was supposed to meet Buffy to do something.
But it was just, they really fixated on the drinking. Well, it's like, but tea, right?
Yeah. And there's a couple lines that are cut out where Willow's like, you went by his place? He has a place? Well, of course he does, but I just always think of him as living inside the library.
Yeah.
You know. Which is kind of funny.
That's how I feel, too. I mean, and apparently the janitor as well. So Xander talks about, it's the straight and narrow ones that you have to worry about, you know.
We hear about Xander's uncle, which is a very interesting story.
Yep.
Buffy is like, has anybody seen anything weird? And Cordelia's like, well, he was normal yesterday when I saw him talking to the police. Which, I'm like, oh, Cordelia.
And it's also funny, because he clearly wasn't normal. Like, she even, reacted to him. Like, Cordelia's mode of, processing how other people are behaving is just so limited. She's like, he yelled at me and was very, upset about the entire situation. Seemed perfectly normal.
And so they talk about that, it's about a homicide, and Buffy's like, I'm calling him right now, and is about to head to his office to do it, and she hears a noise. And she starts wandering through the bookshelves and discovers Ethan Rain.
Okay, I want to say something here.
Okay.
Because I feel like I always notice sets. The stacks in this library are incredibly disorganized. Like, books are just, shoved in there. Like, they're all falling all over the place. I'm just like, Giles, get it together, man. You know?
No, Giles would not let his library be like that. No. I mean, he lives there. We've already discussed this. He has the time to keep those organized. Nobody goes and looks through those books, so he can have them orderly. Right.
You can't blame it on the students.
Well, maybe it's because every time they look through them, they're always in a hurry to save the world. And so they get all messed up. So she runs into Ethan Rain. She's like, hey, I know you. You ran the costume shop and almost killed us all.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, but you looked great.
I love that so much.
And Buffy punches him.
Oh! So now we're even?
I'll let you know when we're even. What are you doing here?
Snooping around.
Honesty. Nice touch.
It's one of my virtues. Not really.
But then she tells him, why don't I call the police and have you arrested for breaking and entering? And I'm thinking to myself, at the library, at the school, that's never locked or even closed. You're going to have him arrested for breaking and entering.
So, here's my thing. I adore Ethan Rain, and I really, enjoy a couple of bits of dialogue, But similar to Giles in this episode, he should have had a way bigger role.
Yeah, I agree. There should have been more history.
Yeah.
Between them.
They have, like, what, 2 scenes together in this entire episode, and both of them are really short.
Yeah.
It's annoying to me. But yeah, it is fun to see Ethan again. I love his bits of dialogue. I love he matches Buffy when it comes to quips, and that's hard to do.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah.
We'll give him credit where credit is due. But yeah, he mentions that him and Rupert go way back, and then we get more dreams, flashes of a demon, and Buffy is calling Giles and wakes him up from his dreams.
Yes.
And is pretty, like, straightforward with him, asks what the Mark of Igon is, says she's with Ethan, like, just is trying to get to the bottom of what's going on here with Giles.
And Giles is like, hey, you're in danger if Ethan's there. Put down the phone and get out of there as quick as possible. And she's like, I'm not. You have to answer me. And then demon-possessed corpse of Philip crashes through the window of Giles's office.
And then Ethan immediately uses Buffy as a meat shield.
Yes, which is funny. And I didn't notice this when I was reading through the script book, but it says that he's dressed in the clothes in which he was killed again. So he found his clothes.
Yeah.
Not any clothes.
Yeah. So Philip starts going after Buffy. The motivations of the Igon demon is really inconsistent, because it seems to always go after Buffy no matter whether she has a tattoo on her or not. But it starts to go after Buffy, and Ethan tries to get away, and conveniently the gang shows up, and Buffy tells them to catch him.
I assume they heard the crash.
Yeah. Ethan knocks Xander to the side, but Cordy comes in with a solid, frantic panic kick that knocks Ethan down real good. And Philip is attacking Buffy, and she pushes him into the book cage and locks it. And then we kind of, like, regroup after that, and Willow's looking at him through the cage, and she's just like, I'm not getting close enough to take a pulse, but he looks dead.
Yeah, I love that. And then Giles rushes in. Giles looks at Philip and it's like, it can't be. And Ethan says, hey, Ripper, yes, it can.
Why did he call him Ripper?
You should have left when I told you.
Oh.
But see, I think there should have been more of that. Like, that's the only thing we get that, like, shows Giles's past.
Yeah.
Like, the scene in Halloween when he's...
Oh, yeah.
Is much better.
He is much more Ripper in Halloween than he is in this episode.
Yeah, and I think that there should have been more of that Giles in this episode. Like, it should have been all this episode.
Yeah.
and we don't really get it at all, except these, like, 5 seconds right here. Mm-hmm. Basically, they talk about what's going on, and at that point, Philip kicks open the cage door and comes out, which I find strange because, like, later episodes, this cage holds a werewolf.
Yeah, I wrote
various vampires.
I wrote in my notes, I said, I guess they reinforce it later.
Yeah.
But before we get to that point, I want to talk a little bit about what Ethan says here, because I think it's interesting.
Okay.
Because Giles is talking about how Ethan should have left town, and Ethan immediately fires back that if he really cared, he should have left too. And, like, you know, and calls him out, says, I know you've been having the dreams, I know you know, like, what's coming, kind of deal, and the dangers that it poses on everyone around you. So it's a really quick scene, but it's something to show why Giles feels as guilty as he does for the events of this episode towards the end. It's because not only did he make this decision when he was young and stupid 20 years ago to mess with this demon, but then these signs started showing him that this demon was coming back, and he stuck around, and Ethan called him on it. And I think that Giles understood his role in allowing this to happen to Jenny later on when she gets possessed because of his actions there.
Because he stayed.
Mm-hmm. As Philip escapes, Jenny gets hit on the head hard, poor girl. And
as this happens, right when the door is kicked open, I want to point out that Xander immediately jumps in front of and shields Cordelia.
Yeah.
Which I kind of think is some cool foreshadowing.
Oh, yeah.
That's exactly what he does is he jumps in front of and pushes Cordelia out of the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Buffy is there fighting Philip. There's a few hits exchanged, and then he melts into more slime. And speaking of Xander and Cordelia, Xander and Cordelia like hold each other for a while after this encounter is over. Like they're just hanging on to each other.
I saw that too.
Giles is kind of getting Ginny up, and as all that is going on, we notice that the slime touches Ginny's hand, and when she's up, she kind of like leans into him, and her eyes glow. Oh no, it's the glowy eyes.
And nobody sees this. She doesn't have her face hidden or anything.
No, it's just
So, like,
everybody's very occupied right now. You know, Xander and Cordelia are having a moment. You know, Buffy's distracted by, I guess, the slime on the floor. You know, everybody's got something to look at. And
Well,
Ethan's running away. So, as Ethan does. So this is where I'm going to have my talk again that I've had in Never Kill a Boy on the First Date. But does anybody ever consider, like, concussions in this universe?
yeah, no, not really.
Ginny's showing a lot of signs that would make me nervous. She took a direct hit right to the head, and she's super, super out of it.
Yeah, she's dizzy and not able to stand up straight. I would think instead of taking her home, we should take her to the doctor.
One would think.
But nobody thinks of that.
Apparently in the Buffyverse, concussions aren't a thing that happened. Buffy asks again what is going on, and Giles says it's private, and there's just this rather upsetting argument between these two. Buffy asks again point blank, what is the mark of Igon, and Giles tells her to stay out of it. And he even pulls out the Watcher card, which never works, but still he tries. He's like, I'm your Watcher, this is my business, stop bothering me, kind of just awful. I hate every bit of it.
Yeah,
it doesn't feel like Giles.
Because you wonder how he thinks he's going to fix this without her.
Yeah, it's just, ugh. Yeah. But anyway, so he starts to leave with Ginny, and as soon as they exit, this part I love, because Buffy immediately goes into leader mode and is just like, all right, here's what we're actually doing.
Yeah.
So she tells Willow to research and Xander to dig through Giles' files, which Xander is super cool about, apparently.
Oh, yeah, definitely. He's all kinds of okay with that.
And then I love...
You know who wouldn't be? Because I would. I would go through Giles' files.
And then Cordelia has this cute little moment. She's like, well, what about me? I care about Giles.
And she's told to work with Xander.
And then immediately regrets her decisions.
Oh, yeah.
So Ginny and Giles are back at Giles' apartment. She says that she was not ready to go home, so they're sharing a drink. And Giles is talking about being sorry. And this is where, like, the weird stuff really starts happening with some of the decisions they made. And I kind of get what they were going for, this idea of possession and this idea of, like, physical assault that comes with possession. Like, you know, there's an idea that they play with here. Ginny is being controlled by this demon that at the end it's kind of treated similar to a physical assault, where she like shies away from Giles's touch at the end of the episode and things like that. And this is where we start to see some like weird stuff, because here this is when it's really cranked up, like the sultry side of Ginny, and this is in fact Igon, who apparently acts completely differently when it's possessing an unconscious body versus a dead body. Because when it's possessing a dead body, it's just like a shambling zombie thing. But when it's possessing a unconscious body, then it has personality and like wants to seduce Giles, and it's just a completely different villain. Ginny starts flirting, and Giles goes to kiss her, and then says that she needs to get home, that he's dangerous. And we kind of cut away from that. And Willow is killing it.
Oh, yeah. Willow is all kinds of being, Giles.
Yeah. And
Sure.
this is the part of this episode that I really like. I really like the parallels between Willow and Giles in this episode, because we see this again at the end of season 6, where Willow falls into the same trap that Giles did when he was 21. Willow turns to dark magics and stuff like that to act as a vice for her, similar to the way Giles did in his past. And so you see Willow being real straight-laced and being the basically model Watcher Jr. here, and doing everything right. And it goes back to that commentary that Xander had a little bit earlier in the episode. It's like, those are the ones you have to watch out for. Those are the ones who, when they get that taste of darkness, really go for it. I just wonder, because I feel like, again, this is one of those things where I don't know how early they started thinking about the idea of maybe one day we'll make Willow evil, but I feel like it was probably in the back of Joss Whedon's mind pretty early that would be a fun twist. It
actually was, and I read, I don't remember what it was. I read an interview with him at some point where in like season 3 he was thinking about it. Mm-hmm. Of that storyline for Willow, and it was originally supposed to be season 5, but they ended up doing the Dawn Key one instead. Mm-hmm. But that was pretty much always planned for Willow.
Yeah,
you are correct.
There's
I read it somewhere.
There's so much. This episode particularly, I feel like, and it may have been before he had really cemented the idea, but this episode particularly, I think, foreshadows Willow's story arc immensely by drawing so many parallels between her and Giles in it.
Yeah.
But yeah, she finds the mark of Igon and talks about like how it works. She says that, it's also known as the sleepwalker because it only exists in this reality by possessing the unconscious, and it can become a permanent possession, but the reason that it hasn't been is because it keeps possessing dead people, and dead people can't like sustain the demonic energy, so it just kind of disintegrates the host at that point, and that's why they keep melting into slime. And then Buffy's like, I still don't know what this has to do with Giles. And Willow's like, well, I'm not sure about Giles, but ancient sex used to induce possession for bacchanals and orgies, which is the second time this season that Willow's just casually had information about orgies, and I want to know what she's researching in her personal time.
Oh, yeah. All kinds of stuff.
But yeah, Buffy and Xander realized that there was an unconscious body around when Philip went into the ooze.
Oh, yeah. And they immediately try to call, but the next scene is Jenny pulling out the cords to Giles's phone. Mm-hmm. Not good.
No. I mean, just from a maintenance perspective, that's a hassle to deal with.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And then Jenny does some more coming on to Giles, and Giles is again uncomfortable. Buffy then is seen back in the library hanging up after thanking the operator for checking Giles's line, which, I mean, obviously I remember, landlines and regular phones and stuff, but I don't remember it being such a casual thing in the 90s to call the operator to check if lines were working. I don't think I ever did that or was around anyone who did it.
She got a really, friendly operator, too. It is super, casual conversation with this operator.
Yeah, but, there's that scene that was cut earlier where she's asking the operator to check a line. And I'm like, is this just something you do? Because, usually it's just busy or no one answers. I mean...
That's why they're so friendly, is Buffy's just constantly calling the operator because she doesn't know how phones work.
Then we come back to Jenny and Giles in the apartment, and
oh boy,
Jenny is finally tired of Giles not, I guess, being accepting of her advances. Mm-hmm. And it's like, oh, you don't change, do you? And she gives up pretending to be Jenny and lets him know that she is in fact possessed by Igon.
Mm-hmm. I have one line here that really irritates me.
Okay.
And it's the line...
I think I know what it is.
Where Igon is mocking Giles by calling him a woman. And I'm just like, why is this ancient demon from another reality part of the patriarchy? Why did we have to have that storyline?
The patriarchy actually where a 16-year-old girl is the savior of the world. I'm just saying.
It's so unnecessary. And there's
like nobody in this show should ever not be like women are awesome.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and especially like demons and vampires are like supposed to have this fear of the Slayer like instilled in them. And so this idea of calling someone a woman to degrade them, to put them down, coming from a demon who is in fact possessing a woman at that time is just ridiculous.
Yeah.
That bugged me. There'll be another one coming up. Don't worry. But yeah, so Igon, it continues to threaten.
You never had the strength for me. You don't deserve me. But guess what? You've got me.
Under your skin.
Still very aggressive, like pulls him up, kisses him. Was it good for you? And I'm just like, man, Igon really has a thing for Giles.
Oh, yeah.
Which I don't blame Igon. I mean, very attractive man, but still. So Buffy kicks in the door and kicks Igon across the room. And then Igon becomes like this weird, like, 3 down, 2 to go, menacing, I'm gonna kill them all now. I'm just like, you've just been here making out with Giles, so sure, that's what your plan is. But jumps out the window. Like, I just thought the plan was to get a body that it could possess permanently, but it's really wants to kill these 5 specifically, I guess. I feel like once you got a body that you feel like you can possess permanently, you're done. You're good. Just go on about your demon life. The Igon demon is just so inconsistent. I don't understand its motivation, and I don't think that there was really much thought put into what its motivations were, other than we need threat. Threat is had. From there, Buffy checks on Giles, and Giles is there, and I do like this moment where he's like leaning up against the wall, and he's just like fixated on the window where Igon just jumped out in Jenny's body, and he's just like saying, "I'm sorry," and Buffy's like, "Don't be sorry, be Giles." Which there's a couple of...
It's like, I need you.
Yeah, there's a couple of moments like that in this episode that really do elevate this episode in a couple... Like, this episode, there's some great stuff with Buffy and Giles, and there's some cool, like, parallels with Giles and Willow, and that all the Igon stuff is terrible, and even the other stuff that I feel like I should enjoy, I don't enjoy as much because... They're doing it more to, like, serve the plot of Igon, which isn't an interesting villain. Nothing's fully realized about it. And it's just kind of obnoxious. But, yeah. Then we have a really, really short scene at the library where Xander finds a pic in Giles' files. And fun fact about this image of, like, Rocker Giles is it is a superimposed image of Anthony Stewart Head's face on Sid Vicious, who is the bassist for Sex Pistols.
I did not know that. I actually thought that they just got an old picture of Giles.
Yeah, so that's what that is.
That is hilarious. I love it. So Buffy is talking to Giles, and Giles starts out talking about how when he was 21, he was studying at school and having to do Watcher stuff by night, and he hated it. So he dropped out and went to London and found this horrible crowd, and Ethan and him discovered Igon. Mm-hmm. That it was an amazing high when they let Igon possess him. So him and Ethan and a group of other people decided that instead of, doing, some light marijuana smoking or, raves or, shoplifting a lipstick, they would summon a demon to possess them by turns.
It was their wild days.
Yeah, because that's what you do, in
your rebellious early 20s.
Of course. Then one of the people, the demon, took control of him and killed him, and they thought the demon was gone after that, which I have no idea why. the demon killed their friend and they thought the demon was gone.
Yeah.
And basically told Buffy that the demon's going to kill him now.
Uh-huh.
And Buffy just like, it's going after Ethan. Better go check it out. And now I haven't watched this in a while, so I read this through the script book. And I had forgotten how she seems really upset with Giles.
Mm-hmm.
This scene. It doesn't really read that way when you're reading it in the script book.
Yeah.
Where she's just like, I know, it's okay, you know. And then you watch it, it's like she seems really mad with and upset with him.
And I think this is just me.
Sense. I just didn't get it.
I think for me, especially looking at kind of how she reacts for the rest of the episode, it's not so much that she's upset about what he did 20 years ago. It's that she's upset that he didn't let her in this time around. Like, when he was dealing with this currently and just decided that she didn't need to be part of it. I think that's the part that really got to Buffy. That and the growing pains of realizing that the adult figures in your life, the people that you look up to, are in fact fallible, is a hard thing to experience. And there's definitely some of that in this episode, where Buffy's kind of realizing stuff about her father figure, right? That, you know, he's not as, you know, straight-laced and perfect as she had envisioned him being, and that upsets her.
Of, there's actually, where you said that, there's actually a point in the script book, and I don't think we're there yet, where it refers to Buffy as Giles' surrogate daughter. Mm-hmm. And I was just mentioning it because you said that about her father figure.
Yeah. So here's my thing about this, is that Buffy decides that she needs to find Ethan, and Giles says he will come along, and she says no. And I'm just like, didn't y'all just have a whole conversation about how this demon's trying to kill both of them? And so you decide to go and look for Ethan and leave Giles alone?
Yeah, leave him all by himself. It doesn't seem very safe for Giles.
I feel like that was something the writer didn't think through.
Yeah.
Oh.
So, okay. In the episode, the next scene is Buffy at the costume shop finding Ethan. Mm-hmm. Okay, in the script book, there's an entire scene cut out here.
All right, I'm excited.
It is Demon Jenny.
Okay.
Wandering the streets of Sunnydale, and a middle-aged man walking his little dog named Spitzner. Okay. And he's walking his dog, and the dog's crazy, jumping, barking uncontrollably, and the man says, "No, that's okay. There's nothing to be afraid of." And he sees Jenny's silhouette, and then Jenny steps out of the shadows, and he sees her, and she says in her demon voice, "I really like dogs." And the man kind of starts to back up. Demon Jenny snatches the leash from his hand, and the man says, Spritzer, and then turns and runs for his life. And as we watch him run away, we hear the dog barking, then yelping, and then a crunching sound, and then nothing. And I just want to point out how they did an entire scene where Jenny, possessed by a demon, eats a dog.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she eats a dog.
I'm glad that was not in the
a fluffy little white dog, by the way.
That's a pattern that they did not need to keep up. Like, possession equals eating animals. Like, they did it with the hyenas and the pig, and then they don't need to keep that trend going up.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That was so much worse than I thought it was going to be. Aw.
Poor little guy.
Poor puppy.
Yeah.
All right, so Buffy arrives at Ethan's costume shop, and again, Ethan can trade barbs with Buffy all day long, and I would watch it. I just think it's really entertaining. Up until the point where he says, "Aren't we manly?" When Buffy says, we don't need to run. He says, "Aren't we manly?" And Buffy replies, "One of us is." And again, I'm back to this whole idea of just like, why are we like continuing
man good,
this?
Girl bad. Yeah,
continuing this trend that just is awful. I mean, stop.
Yeah. I agree.
Oh, yeah. Anyway, so casual misogyny aside, Ethan somehow knocks out Buffy? Question mark.
Yeah, with his, and it's
explain.
like, she came to protect you. Why are you trying to knock her out?
Yeah, even, like, I don't
She
mind
literally just said she was going to protect you.
I don't mind his plan, his intent, even though it doesn't really make sense, and we'll get into that when Igon shows up later and it doesn't make sense. But, like, he shouldn't be able to do that.
Well, I mean, he does use a board.
But he is not framed as strong. Cordelia took him out with a kick earlier.
Good point. Yeah.
Ethan is supposed to be like the weakest little, like, just, No way in a million years. I don't care what he's using. Is he going to knock out Buffy with blunt force? Now, if he had some kind of syringe, I could maybe buy it and drugged her into unconsciousness. But just blunt force knocking Buffy out, there's no way Ethan's pulling that off.
So then we go to the next scene, and Ethan's telling Buffy to wake up, and she is tied to a table, face down. Mm-hmm. And Ethan is starting to put the tattoo mark of Igon on her neck, so that the demon will go for her.
I do enjoy the line. This is probably my favorite line of Ethan's in this entire episode.
You know, I hope you're not taking this personally, Buffy. I actually kind of like you. It's just that I like myself a lot more.
Ethan has really good one-liners.
Fantastic. But, like, I feel like if they had framed this to where Buffy was drugged in some way, I would believe this a lot more. But she is being held down to this table by a single rope.
Yeah.
And, like, it appears that she should still have some mobility. I mean, the table is just, like, a little flimsy table on the floor. Like, it's not like it's bolted in any way. Even if that rope was super strong, she should still be able to get up some way and take control of this situation. But she just lies there, because as long as that rope's tied, she can't move the rest of her body. It's just Buffy apparently decided that she was going to be super weak that particular evening. I don't understand what happened.
Yeah. This episode's got lots of stuff. We go back to the library, and Willow, Xander, and Cordelia are talking about how they can get the demon out of Miss Calendar.
And Willow, wait, before we get to that, it opens up with Willow sipping tea.
I saw that. I was like, oh, he really is becoming Giles. But then Xander and Cordelia kind of start bickering and fighting, and Willow just jumps up and lets them have it.
Hey! We don't have time for this. Our friends are in trouble. Now we have to put our heads together and get them out of it. And if you two aren't with me 110%, then get the hell out of my library. We're sorry.
We'll be good.
It is such a great, like, power play by Willow, and we've had this a couple of times, because we had it also in Reptile Boy, where she just gets so irritated with the people around her and just takes control of the situation and just shows that she has what it takes to be a commanding presence, which again works to foreshadow some things that Willow becomes later on in the series, and I love. But can we talk about this argument that Xander and Cordelia are having, and how if Willow wasn't in that room, they would have been making out in this episode? I mean, they are like an inch apart when they're arguing.
Oh, yeah, definitely. They just weren't alone.
They just weren't alone this time. Next time they argue, they'll be alone. It was a very intimate argument. So Xander suggests that maybe they just need a new dead body for Igon to jump into. And Willow says that won't kill it. It'll just give it a change of scenery. And then she just has one of those, oh, and then, like, runs out.
Yes. And they talk about how good she is. And I'm like, well, they don't really know what she figured out.
But she's come up with something. It's Willow. She's got it. So Buffy is now tattooed. And Ethan works to start removing his own tattoo while we kind of see glimpses of Buffy sawing that rope that, like, holds her entire body in place. And we have a little glimpse of Giles in his apartment and more flashes. And somehow he sees through Ethan's eyes and sees Buffy on the table in his flashes that are tied to Igon.
Very weird, because maybe he's seeing what Igon is going to see soon or something.
Maybe.
Well, no, because Buffy is
really
off the table before she comes in. I don't know. It doesn't make sense. But he gets up and runs out of his apartment to go save Buffy. And at that time, Demon Jenny bursts into the costume store, and Buffy cuts the rope and comes untied from the table, and they start fighting.
Mm-hmm. So can I just say that the fact that this tattoo trick worked when the demon is looking Ethan like straight in the eyes, I don't understand. Like, I could kind of buy it if it was just like the homing beacon concept, and it was just like, okay, well, it needs 5 sacrifices, even though that's not explained ever. But it needs to kill 5 people. And so if I remove this tattoo, it can't find me. And then it'll have Buffy to replace the 5th one, so it'll be satisfied, so it won't try to find me. Like, I could kind of see a version of this story where it works, but it really doesn't work when Igon literally looks Ethan in the face, and it's just like, no, you're not the guy. That doesn't make any sense. You don't have a tattoo.
Yeah, it really doesn't make sense.
But yeah, Buffy and Igon fight, and Giles enters and is immediately like, take me, and...
Which he has a tattoo, so could have worked.
Yeah. So Buffy tries to save Giles, and now Igon has, like, force push powers and, like, pushes Buffy across the room, because that's an ability Igon casually has now. And... Yeah, whatever. It doesn't matter. Igon doesn't make any sense. It's okay. And Igon is about to kill Giles or do something, I don't know, maybe make out with Giles. We're still uncertain about what would have happened next, because Angel runs in and attacks Igon and starts choking Jenny's body, and Giles is panicked, saying he's killing her, and Willow is like, no, trust me, this is going to work. I will reference that line again later on in the episode.
Okay.
But anyway, and then Igon jumps into Angel's body and fights with his inner demon.
Which is very awkward and really bad CGI.
Here's what I'm wondering. Did they have, like, a couple of stand-ins for him? Or did David literally have to go get in, like, full vampire makeup and full Igon makeup to have, like, 3 seconds of, like, footage for those transitions?
Yeah.
Because that would have been rough. Like, sit in the chair for 4 hours. All right, we need 30 seconds of you in this makeup. All right, now go and take it off and put on a whole nother set of makeup. But yeah, Angel defeats Igon, and Buffy and the rest of them, like, run to check on him, like, all genuinely concerned, including Xander.
Yeah. And I'll point out that they're talking about this, and Angel replies, I've had a demon inside me for a couple 100 years just waiting for a good fight.
Uh-huh.
And Cordelia is standing there.
Yeah.
So at this point, she now knows that Angel is a vampire.
Mm-hmm.
Because she doesn't have any kind of reaction. But, like, the last time we saw her and Angel together, she still didn't know. So I'm thinking this is kind of a plot hole type thing. Because, like, there's never a moment where Cordelia finds out. She just goes from knowing to not knowing.
Yeah. It's not so much a plot hole as in we were robbed of the moment when she finds out. Like, you don't get her discovering that, oh, yeah, he is, in fact, a vampire. You never get that moment.
And I would have very much enjoyed seeing that, but I think what happened is just a different writer wrote it like she knew. And I think, like, Jenny should give Angel some credit here for saving her life.
Yeah, which I think...
We never really go back to Angel saving Jenny's life.
Kind of remember that there might be, like, a quick reference to it later on when she's talking to her uncle about how he saved, like, she says something like he saved my life or something, but I'm not 100% sure on that. I think it's just a single line, and it's just dropped and forgotten almost immediately, but it is in a bit of dialogue, if I remember correctly. We will wait and see, but yeah, it is something that is interesting that Angel is the one to save Jenny, knowing the fact that later on, Angel is the one to kill Jenny, so... Again, I love these like little nuggets that tie into each other. So I appreciate that is the truth of this, is that Ginny would have died after this episode had it not been for Angel, yet Angel is still her ultimate demise. It's a fun thing. But yeah, so Giles is checking on Ginny as Angel's recovering, and we see Ethan running away in the background. And Giles and Ginny end up leaving together as Buffy and Angel watch them. I feel like there's like a choice made of why it's Buffy and Angel watching Giles and Ginny. I don't understand what the choice is, but it feels like a very intentional thing, the way it's shot and edited together, of the parallels of those two relationships, but I don't see the parallels, so maybe someone wiser than I will be able to explain it to me at some point, but right there I'm just like, it's clearly a relationship watching a relationship, but I don't know what the ties are there.
We cut to the next day, and Buffy, Xander, and Willow are walking into school, and Buffy's talking about how she has to get the tattoo removed. And she was saving up her allowance for some shoes.
Yeah, very important shoes.
I'm thinking, doesn't it cost like thousands of dollars to get a tattoo removed?
I don't know how much it costs to get a tattoo removed, but I could imagine
she's not
that
enough to do it in her allowance.
I could imagine that Buffy might be interested in some shoes that are expensive enough to rival tattoo being removed. Not that she would ever actually be able to buy them. It's just one of those things that she is always saving up for and never actually gets. But also, Giles needs to be paying for this tattoo to be removed.
I think so too. Like, this is something Giles should be
this should not be on Buffy.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Xander compliments Willow on her plan to put the demon into Angel. And this is when Willow says, I wasn't sure it was going to work. Which, considering earlier she was like, no, trust me, this is going to work, shows just how unreliable Willow can be at times. It works as a subtle foreshadowing to Willow's rash decisions, that she just decides something's a good idea, and then does it, and then thinks about it afterwards, and it's just like, that may have not been a good idea. That could have gone bad in so many different ways. They talk about how Willow should maybe consider becoming a watcher, and she's just like, no, it's too much stress. I don't see how Giles does it. And Buffy makes a comment that made me pause, where she says, I don't think he has a choice. And the reason it makes me pause is because we just came off of Lie to Me, which is, again, it's probably more of different writers and different, not really connecting all the dots. But after coming off... It seems
like it's connected.
After coming off of an episode where you have Ford, who's in this mentality of not having a choice, and Buffy's like, you always have a choice, I think there's something to be said here about this idea of Giles has a choice, but what Buffy's really saying here is that Giles' guilt on what he has done is so great that being a watcher is his redemption, right? And that is kind of this idea of this choice was taken away from Giles because he's too good of a person to not be a watcher and not try to make the world a better place in this role. And I think that's what could be kind of inferred in that line of, I don't think he has a choice. Because obviously Buffy is of the mentality that you always have a choice. But Giles' impossible choice versus Ford's impossible choice is Giles chose the path of good as the choice that he had to make, whereas Ford chose a path of evil as the choice that he had to make. And that's a key difference there. So after that, we see Giles catch up with Ginny. And this is where you really get, like, the aftermath and this idea of possession and this idea of, like, the physical assault of it, right? And that she is essentially recovering from this assault and shies away from Giles's touch because, though indirectly Giles is responsible for what happened to Ginny, it's interesting enough. I'm not sure enough was done with it to really make this mesh as well as I would like it to at the end of this episode. And I think the reason is that there's so many times where they have done similar type storylines where people have been violated just as much as Ginny has been violated, and it just rolls off their back. And I think this one doesn't have the weight to deserve this reaction without more context or without having that be the way that this stuff is always handled. And it's just an unfortunate thing about the inconsistency about some of these earlier seasons.
I thought that too.
Yeah.
When I watch it, I always think she's overreacting, and then I feel guilty about thinking that.
Yeah, it feels like when you're watching it, you're like, man, she's really overreacting. And then you think about it, it's like, no, she's not. But this show has framed so many terrible situations as if they're just all
Not
okay
terrible.
at the end of the day. And then you get to a scene like this, and you're just like, yeah, she was, like, essentially raped in this episode. Like, she was violated in
and
a very physical way.
Eating a dog?
Yeah. I mean, it seems to imply that she has a memory of what has happened to at least some extent because of the way that she's reacting and how she's talking about it. But yeah, she says that she just needs to get to class and kind of like just removes herself from that situation. So suddenly Giles and Ginny aren't looking as cute and adorable as they were at the beginning of the episode.
No.
And then we have this final scene between Buffy and Giles, which is probably my favorite of this episode.
It's a very cute scene.
It is very cute. It has some really good lines that really kind of make some of what we kind of went through in this episode feel like it's worthwhile. Because of the growth between these two characters and this relationship specifically, I think really works. Giles is like talking about how he doesn't think Ginny will ever be able to forgive him and that maybe she shouldn't. And then Buffy replies with, maybe you should. And it's just a really sweet moment, similar to this idea that I had earlier of, don't be sorry, be Giles. The best thing that Giles can do right now to make up for what he did in his past is to do what he's been doing, is to continue his role as a watcher and to continue to do the work that he's been doing. And Buffy understands that. And we see Buffy motivate Angel in a very similar way in season 3 after everything he does in this season to kind of go down a similar path that she's motivating Giles to stick to in this episode. It's just like, this is the work you should be doing, and you can't keep beating yourself up over stuff that you did a long time ago, because that's taking away from the good you're doing now and the good that you can continue to do. And it's just like a really quick exchange, but there's a lot of stuff in there. But you also have this moment of realization, right, that your perfect father figure, your great watcher, idealist idea of what he is and what he's always been kind of comes crashing down when you hear about his past and what he actually is capable of being. And you have this amazing line of,
I'm so used to you being a grown-up, and then I find out that you're a person.
I just love it. It's a really good scene.
And then they have a scene where she says, we're supposed to be training, and I have the perfect music, and shows him a CD and teases him about how, you want to say it. And he talks about how it isn't music. And that's the end.
Yes. So, a weird rabbit hole that I went down in the end of this episode. So the episode actually ends with Giles saying, Bay City Rollers, now that's music.
Yeah.
Which is kind of funny, but also one of those things that if you start to dissect really doesn't make sense. And I got into a whole Reddit thread about people talking about Giles's taste in music being super eclectic in a way that doesn't really make sense. Not eclectic in a way that like, oh yeah, he's got like a lot of different styles that he likes. No, there's clearly like music that makes sense for Giles to like, and then there's this Bay City Rollers drop, which doesn't really make sense with especially this episode and thinking about Giles's history and like, one of my most cherished scenes of the entire series is when Oz is marveling over Giles's record collection. Like, Giles is supposed to have amazing taste in music and just have like some of the most amazing things ever. And then like the Bay City Rollers drop is just really funny because they're so very tame compared to what you would expect Giles to be listening to when he's thinking about like the classic great music that he grew up with. It's just, it's a weird drop. But beyond that, this is the real thing I wanted to talk about, is that when I was looking this up and kind of like going down this rabbit hole, I found on YouTube, and I'm going to link this in the description of this podcast. So somebody took Bay City Rollers Saturday Night and made a like little music video for Band Candy to that track. And it is just hilarious and delightful and just wonderful in so many ways. And so I'm gonna go share that link because I was just like, no, this is worth it. People need to know this exists. And also, no music in this one, no songs. But I will give a shout out to Christoph Beck, who scored many seasons of Buffy. But Mark of Igon is the track that plays a couple different times in this. It's the one that kind of goes do 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 do, like it's like has that like really kind of chilling edge to it, and it is one of my favorite scores in all of Buffy. And I just wanted to shout that out because Christoph Beck has done an incredible job with the music that he did for Buffy, and was brought back several times even after he stopped being the regular composer for the show, because of his sound is so tied to Buffy. But that Mark of Igon track, I think it's the one that they use for like the DVD menus and stuff like that. Like it is so iconic to me that anytime I hear it, I'm just like, that's Buffy. That's a Buffy track. And I thought I'd shout that one out instead. I'm not going to put it on the playlist, but go listen to it. It's just called Mark of Igon, and it's great.
I'll have to go listen to it.
It starts out kind of like rock and roll and like with the like weird like shredding noises, and then it goes like super creepy and gothic with just like little like ding 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 noises, and it's just a really interesting balance. But yeah, so that is The Dark Age. It is an episode that I feel like should be better than it is, and I kind of feel like I was robbed. That's how I come out of this episode every time.
Yeah, I think it should be better too. Next week is What's My Line Part 1.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a 2-parter coming up.
Yes. Which I know that we did Welcome to the Hellmouth and The Harvest as one part, but from here on out, we're going to try to do all of the 2-parters, each individual episode, rather than lumping them together. Because if you hadn't noticed, we're kind of long-winded, and it's really hard to do 2 episodes in a single podcast for us.
A little bit long-winded. Yes,
Little bit.
Little bit.
All right, so thank y'all so much for listening, and this is where we say bye.
Bye.